phone for more is Becton Dickinson President and CEO Tom Polen. Tom, thanks for joining us. My question is actually on the second half outlook and what you're telling investors. Obviously, the past quarter has been a good time to be selling COVID-19 tests. But what happens when we start getting more vaccines into people's arms for demand for testing?
Sure, Sarah, and thanks for having me this afternoon. As you mentioned, we had very strong performance on revenue and earnings in this first quarter, and it reflects not only strong diagnostic revenue, but I think even more exciting for us is strong performance of the base business, which was up nicely against the backdrop of COVID resurgences around the world. I think to your question in terms of what happens with testing as we think about going forward, what you've seen to date is really a testing happening a lot in kind of the usual locations you may expect: hospitals, urgent care centers, pharmacies. There's pop-up locations, but mostly led by traditional healthcare system providers. What I think will probably be the next big push as we go into the back half of the year, and hopefully as we see the continued rollout of vaccines and hopeful continuation of them being very effective with the virus, is a big push in kind of the return to normal testing in more non-traditional healthcare settings. These could be places like schools, businesses, airports that are helping enable more of a return to a normal way of life.
So my question on that, Tom, is how much do your tests cost for people? Because I too could see, in massive office buildings in Manhattan, for instance, where you have thousands of people entering to either show you have a vaccine or a test. But we talked to Illume, the at-home testing saliva, no prescription test that just got approved. It's $30 a test. So how much are your tests, and how practical does it make using on a larger scale to open things up like buildings and schools?
Quite a bit less expensive than that test. We've actually been very focused. So we make over 40 billion devices a year as a company, and talk about that later. But we're very good at manufacturing, and we're very good at manufacturing things efficiently. And so as we've been scaling up our production for COVID diagnostic tests, and we've made tens of millions of those already, we've actually just very recently reduced our pricing by about 25% on those tests into the low to mid-teens per test to really do exactly what you mentioned, which is ensure access to the testing, particularly in light of the new variants that are emerging and spreading. Right? We want to be part of helping to stop that with expansion of testing.
As and when demand for testing tails off, do you think that will be adequately made up for by demand for some of your other products? Do you think there'll be a massive catch-up of other sorts of hospital procedures?
So for us, we've been doing a few things. And just as you think about the company, we're perhaps one of the most relevant and broad companies related to the COVID-19 response. So we're involved not only on the diagnostic side, again, making both molecular and rapid point-of-care tests, but 90% of anyone that ends up in an ICU is treated with one of our devices. That could be one of our infusion pumps or a syringe or another part of one of our products used to collect blood, et cetera. But we're having a role in helping them. And then we have a major role. We're making over 1 billion additional injection devices specifically for the COVID vaccine. And so that will continue to roll out. At the same time, one of the things that we're doing is taking the strong performance that you saw us start off the year with, and we're actually reinvesting a good portion of that into driving incremental innovation. So that's something that we've actually begun. We've created a growth and innovation fund across the company. We've initiated a number of new innovation programs that will help fuel future growth. And people have really been extremely energized because ultimately at the end of the day, for us as a healthcare company, the way that we fulfill our purpose is by bringing new innovations that help more patients. And so we're doubling down on that, even in the middle of the pandemic.
Tom, one final one on testing for me. You mentioned the various mutations that we're all watching and scared of. How are the tests performing against those mutations? Are they as effective, or do they need to change?
Yeah, great question. So for our assay, particularly our point-of-care assay, the rapid 15-minute test, we actually target a different protein than the spike protein. And the spike protein is what's been changing with the new variants primarily. And so we've been evaluating that, and we haven't identified any impact of the variants on our rapid tests at this point.
Tom, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Wilford.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.